Hey everybody, welcome to Jim Reads Too Slow. I'm Jim, and I'm going to do a video about the first week of Horror Mayhem, an entire month of reading short horror fiction. Like I said before, I don't have much of a background in reading horror, but in an earlier video I said something to the effect that I've never read any horror before, and that is not really true. On further reflection, I have read my share of Edgar Allan Poe stories. I've even read a few Lovecraft stories. So I do have some horror in my reading history, but not that much. So week one was dedicated to supernatural beings or creatures, including cryptozoology. Now I read two novellas for this first week. First of all, I finished Rolling in the Deep, a novella by Mira Grant. It's one of two mermaid stories that Grant has published, the other being Into the Drowning Deep. Now, this story is told basically in two parts. It's a found footage documentary that is appearing on the Image TV network. This is a channel known for its sensationalized monster content. So the ship was found adrift with no one on board, traces of blood, all of that. And we see the story of what happened to the passengers and crew as the ship floated above the Marianas Trench. And it's there uh, in combination doing an actual science mission as well as kind of one of those ancient aliens type documentaries out to determine whether mermaids are real. But of course, everyone knows that mermaids are not real, or are they? As I read this, the story played in my head as if it were a movie. Um, it's an interesting story. I would recommend it. It's believable in the sense that there's hard science that the characters fall back on and use to explain various things that are happening. But it didn't really horrify me or frighten me. I wasn't really all that creeped out by it. I suspect that this story was intended as a kind of a sneak peek at future um, killer mermaid stories. The story the story is set up, things are going along, and then bam, it gets really bloody really quick, and it does this kind of a setup for the next story, and then it's over. And about that, when I was looking for information about this book, I heard and saw a few videos and heard it described as a prequel to Into the Drowning Deep. So a lot of people evidently believe that, and it's just not. A prequel is a work whose narrative or story precedes that of an existing work. Rolling in the Deep was published by Subterranean in 2015. Into the Drowning Deep was published by Orbit in 2017. Uh, so there's that. I could not find a hard copy of Rolling in the Deep, so I had to buy a digital copy and read it on my Kindle. Um, but the other book is readily available and also better known. So maybe that's where people got the idea or what gave rise to the confusion there. One thing I do give the author kudos for is her treatment of people with disabilities in her story. Um, she has written a ship's first mate who is deaf and a performer who goes along with the crew of the ship who has paraplegia. She's written them as real people with something to offer. We're not supposed to feel sorry for them. We're not supposed to find them inspiring. Um, so good on Mira Grant for that. Okay, so the next story I read was The Willows by Algernon Blackwood. So I went from killer mermaids to killer trees. Well, not exactly killer trees, but I will say that the reputation of The Willows is well deserved. It's one of the great horror stories. Um, and I found it to be a great horror story, even from what little I know about horror. This is a story about two adventurers who are on a canoe trip down the Danube. They're on their way to the Black Sea when they put in for the night during this raging storm. A lot of wind, a river rising, flooding. They put in on this island in the river. It's an island that's covered with these willow bushes, and they're in an area of the river where the riverside and all of the little islands in the river are thick with these scrub willows. But are they just willows, or are they something more? Are these two camping on an island that's just an island, or is it the intersection between our reality and the reality that's populated by ancient beings who sometimes require human sacrifice? Blackwood, I have to say, masterfully sets the mood in this story, and he keeps it going. He keeps it rolling. He keeps ratcheting it up throughout the story. Little things happen. There are little movements, little noises. There are feelings of dread and unexplainable horror that just sort of is constant, and one thing builds on another. I was kind of creeped out a little with this. I was a little scared for these two. Do they make it? Are they gonna live through this experience? Well, read the story if you haven't already. It is pretty good, and I highly recommend it. So that was week 1 of Horror Mayhem. Week 2 is Gothic horror, and I will remain in classics mode and read Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, a book I am sorry to say I have not yet read. Then if I can finish that during the week, I will read Young Goodman Brown by Nathaniel Hawthorne. So, in other reading, I didn't do an April wrap-up, mainly because I didn't really actually finish very much during April. I did finish Egil's Saga for this year's Sagalong event. That was fun. Just when I was starting to root for Egil. He pulls this stunt where he has a couple of his son-in-law's house carls, or house guards, I guess, servants of some kind, go out with him one day, telling them that he needs their help to go soaking in one of the area hot springs. And then he kills them, so they won't tell anybody where he's hidden his 2 casks of silver. He dies a short time later, a psychopathic killer to the last. So it was a fun read, though. I did enjoy it. In other reading, I've got a family book club going on right now. We're reading The Maltese Falcon by Dashiell Hammett this month, 5 chapters a week. I've read the first quarter of that, and I'm really enjoying it a good deal. And then the fam gets together on Zoom on Saturday nights, and we kind of discuss it. So that's fun. Also, I'm wandering like a child lost in the woods through the final third of Cities of the Red Night by William S. Burroughs, of course. I'm hoping that by the end of this book, I will figure out who's narrating, what's going on. At this point, though, it's more of a reading challenge than being able to follow a coherent story. So anyway, that's the end of the first week of Horror Mayhem, and kind of a little catch up of where I'm at with my reading. I will put together another video here in the next few days, if not sooner. So until then, have a good one, BookTube.